how to expect the unexpected is one of the most important skills. See, I knew you were going to do that. A dungeon master or game master can have as they're running the game, the adventure, all the crazy things the players are doing. You got to be ready for it somehow, right? I mean, right?
Mm-hmm.
We got some tips for you. Stick around. All right, Josh. Now, I definitely did know you were going to do that, and it had nothing to do with that wasn't our first take of our intro. So, which you got me good the first time. But this concept of how do you expect the unexpected? I've heard it phrased like one of my favorite coaches. I like sports. A lot of sports teams will be in close games, and a phrase I would hear is become comfortable being uncomfortable. If you're in that tight situation at the end of a game, you want your team to be the one that succeeds. And there's a lot of parallels between running a game, whether it's Dungeons and Dragons or another TTRPG. You're in that chair. It can be very nerve-wracking when something unexpected happens. So give us a tip. How does this work for you?
Sure. Well, I'll just say that you lost me as soon as you started talking about sports.
Sports ball. Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. I think one of the best things that you could do is just present situations. When you're thinking about creating the session for the day, the quest, whatever it is, or even just the encounter, think of a situation, something that might be interesting, and just present it to your players. See what they do. You don't have to have a specific solution, and oftentimes it's better if you don't. You especially shouldn't have a specific solution in mind that only has one answer. I think when you give your players an opportunity to be in that situation that you've created for them and let them just come up with their own ideas for a solution and just roll with it, you're making yourself just as vulnerable as they are, because they don't know what the situation is going to be. So if you're rolling into that with just the one solution in mind, and it's like, this is the only way that you could do it, they might not think of it. It might not be as obvious as you think it'll be. And you know what? You should go into anything open-minded. They might come up with a solution that you didn't think of. That's like, and they will come up with the solution that you didn't think of.
Oh, it's coming. Yeah. It's coming.
And a lot of times it's going to be better or more interesting. So you can't be tied down to that one specific, this is the way, this is the only way. I think back to like the first session that I ran, which was a lot of fun. I was actually thinking about it earlier today, thinking about like maybe writing that into a short something that could be a PDF, I don't know, whatever. But I was thinking about it earlier today, and the way that my notes were written for it was like all of these if-thens.
The computer game. Game process.
Exactly, the computer game process. Here's the situation. If the players do this, then this is how whoever will react. If the players do this, then this is how they'll react in this different way. And it just adds like so much stress and so much overthinking and so much unnecessary prep. Then rather just create the situation. Maybe think of like a way or two that it could be solved. Just so you're not throwing them into the Kobayashi Maru. Is that what it's called?
Oh, you used a Star Trek reference. Good for you.
I did, but I really like that concept, and I like the name for that situation.
Oh, it's great.
But yeah, I mean, you don't want to put them in an unwinnable situation or just something that's just so wild and so out there that there's nothing for it.
One thing I like to consider with presenting situations is to just present a few resources that could be solutions, and what the players do with those resources is up to them, even if it's weird. Sometimes the weirder the better, but
we're already weird. We're playing this game. So, the weird is where we live. Dive deep into it. When I think about an example of this, like present situations, I think back to our Ivlar campaign, the unfinished one. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be a thing.
Yeah, you've heard us tease at that so many times over the past 2 years, but there is a part of this story where essentially we became prisoners, and Nooch was our DM. If you don't know him yet, you will know him from some other stuff we have going on. Stay tuned. But Nooch was our DM, and we're prisoners in this mining camp, and something's going down. Yeah, I won't go crazy into it, but something is going down, and we need to find a way out. My only possible idea for how to get out of this situation was
So
to
good.
basically rally all of these prisoners and riot. I think we were all running on exhaustion levels and limited gear. We had like pickaxes and that kind of stuff. I was just like, I have no idea what else to do. I'm gonna try to stage a prison break, and we're gonna have a riot. And it was awesome. It was one of the coolest things I've ever done in this game, honestly. I don't know if I have ever felt as like cool as a character as when I made my speech and everybody got hyped and we started to break out of this jail cell, and like it was absolutely insane.
It was a clinic on player agency.
It absolutely was. But I remember talking to Nooch afterwards, and I was like, how are we going to get out of that? And he was like, I don't know.
That was exactly the response. I have no idea. I just put you in prison. It was your job to figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. He was like, so sometimes I just throw you in situations and we just, just see what happens. I didn't know. I was just like, all right.
It's kind of awesome, actually.
It's kind of awesome. I mean, having the trust in your players to do that. Maybe you could try to give them some sort of help, so it's not just I'm in prison and I have absolutely no idea. But that could also be something that comes later on after you give them an opportunity to be hopeless and try to come up with an answer. If they don't have an answer, then you try to help them figure something out.
I think another useful tool in trying to figure out at least how to roll with an idea like a prison break, like Josh just shared with us, is if you have at least an idea of the story as a whole, and also the story that you're trying to tell right now, the way, you hear like, oh, say yes, like the way you say yes and the way you roll with the crazy ideas that the players come up with, you just have to keep that in mind. That always has to be in the back of your reasoning for everything. And you might be thinking, well, that's railroading. Like, no, it's not railroading to have an adventure to go on. That's not railroading. Railroading is, this is the situation, this is the solution, you figure it out, or you lose. Like, that's railroading. Yeah. That's very different than having an idea of where things are going and directing the action that way. That's not even close to the same thing.
And I think one of the easiest ways that you could know where the story is going without it being like a railroad with like, this is exactly what's going to happen, is just knowing all of the characters involved. Like knowing all of the major NPCs and what they care about, what goals they have. You're going to have a really good understanding of, my players do X, Y, and Z, that, they set this building on fire, they kill this lieutenant, they find this map or this plan or whatever. Whether you expected them to find whatever they found or do whatever they did or assassinate whoever they assassinated, if you know the goals and the plans of major NPCs, then you know how they're going to react and what they're going to do in response to what your players have done. And it becomes a lot easier to respond and to figure out what happens next, because you don't need to have your if-thens like I was talking about before. You don't have to have your specifics of, well, if they do this, then they do then that, blah, 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 like, because you're never going to know every option that they have or every idea that they have. Oftentimes it's 4 against 1, 5 against 1, 6 against 1 when you're talking about players to DMs. So their brain, their brain is going to come up with something that you couldn't think of, and that's good. That's what makes this fun.
Absolutely.
But you don't need to know specifically what they're going to do. If you know the players involved, you know the NPCs and characters involved, because as you understand them, you will understand how they should react, and that's going to inform where the story goes and how everything continues and moves on.
Oh, absolutely. And I think another key point is we've had videos about some DM prep tips and things like that, but you can also check in with your players beforehand. That's another part of knowing the characters involved. Like, hey, is there something you wanted to do? And they may change their mind because that's what players do after you're prepared for it. But that's part of the game a little bit. But we've also had videos on character growth, and the DM should be paying attention to how the characters in their game are growing and are changing and what is important to them. You're going to find it easy to at least have a rough idea of what's going to happen or how they might react to something. You'll never account for everything, but it's at least a starting point. And the other thing is not just knowing like how the characters would react to a situation, or NPCs really in the way that you're talking about, but the NPCs are just part of the environment as a whole. So this, knowing the environment or the world that they're living in, or perhaps the dungeon they're adventuring in, that could be traps, that could be levers, however you want to pronounce that, what these things do, the history of the weird old temple that they're adventuring in, that could be something crazy. But know the environment, know the ecosystem, know the weird resources and economy that, maybe there's some kind of weird magical resource that now is under control of a different faction. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Does it react differently somehow? I don't know.
If you understand the environment and the world that your players live in, you don't need to know whether or not they're going to try to put a dam on a river, but you do know that that river supplies this town, this village, these animals water. And if the players happen to stop the flow of water, you know how it's going to affect anyone else involved, and you know what they're going to do, because they need that water, they need that resource, they need whatever it is. Obviously, this is a metaphor, it doesn't have to be water, but you know that when they lose access to that thing that they needed, you know who's going to be affected, and you know that they are going to find some sort of way to try to get that resource, whether it's going back up, seeing that the players did this, we need to reverse it or stop it or whatever, or they're going to look elsewhere to try to get that resource from somewhere else. And that just goes back to, who are the major NPCs? What do they care about? What are their goals?
Yeah, at the end of the day, you really can't try to plan for every single thing that the players will do. I mean, if it's going to bring you comfort, the if-then statements, sometimes they hit, sometimes they do, and it is helpful. But you will exhaust yourself if you really try and account for everything that might happen. It's good to consider what they may try, and you definitely should, but they really will surprise you, maybe more often than not.
Probably.
That depends on the table you're at, too.
Yeah, that's true. Every table I've been at, they surprise me more often than not.
And that's half the fun.
I think the micro decisions I can plan for, and I know what certain people want to do, and those kind of things. But like, as a the macro, like once you like pop out, and it's different. Sometimes you set up a little assassination mini game for someone, and then they include the entire party, and now
yes,
it's chaos.
Yep. Yeah. Watch Ancient Relics and Hokey Religions. You'll see lots of this on display. Sometimes the breakdown between what the players end up doing and what you expect them to do is in your descriptions. Well, you're in luck, because we've got a whole video dedicated to that right now, and it's on screen. And that's the next one you should watch. So do that.